I returned from deployment to find my wife in bed with my brother. My entire family took their side and abandoned me. Years later, when my father got cancer and they desperately needed money, they came crawling back to me. My revenge: I refused to help unless they apologized, which they wouldn't. Okay, so I'm not even sure where to start with this mess, but I guess I'll just dive right in. This is probably going to be really long, and I'm still pretty angry about everything that happened, so bear with me. I honestly don't know if what I did was right or wrong, but I needed to get this out there. I'm 29 years old and I just got back from my third deployment 6 months ago. I thought I was coming home to start a new chapter of my life with my wife of 4 years, Lisa, but instead I walked into the biggest nightmare of my existence. When I got to our apartment, I found her in our bed with my older brother Kevin. Yeah, you read that right, my own brother. The worst part wasn't even catching them together, though that was pretty devastating. The worst part was how my entire family reacted when everything came out. Instead of being supportive or at least staying neutral, they all took Lisa and Kevin's side. My parents, my sister, even my grandparents, they all acted like I was the problem. Let me back up a bit and give you some context about my family. My dad, Thomas, has always been this really domineering guy who thinks his way is the only way. He's a successful contractor who built his business from nothing, and he never lets anyone forget it. My mom, Patricia, is one of those people who just goes along with whatever my dad says, even when it's completely wrong. My brother Kevin is 32 and has always been the favorite child. He's charming, good-looking, and has this way of making people believe whatever he tells them. My younger sister Amanda is 26, and she's basically Kevin's little sidekick. Whatever he says, she agrees with. Growing up, I was always the scapegoat in the family. If something went wrong, it was somehow my fault. If Kevin got in trouble, I must have been a bad influence. If Amanda was upset about something, I must have said something mean to her. When I decided to join the army right after high school, my dad told me I was running away from my problems and that I'd never amount to anything. The thing is, the army actually saved my life. I found purpose there, I found brothers who had my back, and I found out I was actually pretty good at leadership. I worked my way up to staff sergeant and specialized in logistics coordination. I was respected by my peers and my superiors, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But whenever I came home on leave, it was like stepping back into this toxic bubble where nothing I accomplished mattered. My dad would make jokes about me being a government employee living off taxpayer money. Kevin would talk about how much more money he made working in finance than I did in the military. Amanda would make comments about how military guys are just glorified bullies, and my mom would just sit there and let it all happen. The worst part was how they treated Lisa. I met her during my first leave after basic training. She was working as a waitress at this diner near the base, and she was absolutely beautiful. More importantly, she was kind and funny, and she actually seemed to care about what I had to say. We started dating, and when I deployed the first time, she waited for me. When I came back, we got married in a small ceremony that my family barely participated in. My family never accepted her. They always made these snide comments about how she was just a waitress, how she didn't have a college degree, how she was probably just with me for the military benefits. My dad would make inappropriate comments about her appearance right in front of me. Kevin would flirt with her openly at family gatherings while everyone else just laughed it off. Amanda would exclude her from conversations and make her feel unwelcome. I should have seen the signs, but I was deployed so much that I missed a lot of what was happening at home. Lisa started becoming distant during my second deployment, but I thought it was just the stress of me being away. She stopped writing as much, stopped calling as often, and when she did talk to me, she seemed distracted and uncomfortable. When I came back from that deployment, things felt different between us, but I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong. She was spending a lot more time with my family, which I thought was great because I wanted them to finally accept her. She was always going over to my parents' house for dinner or hanging out with Kevin and Amanda on weekends. I was happy that she finally seemed to be fitting in with them. Then I got deployed again, and this time it was for 15 months. It was the longest we'd been apart, and it was brutal. The communication got even worse during this deployment. Sometimes I wouldn't hear from her for weeks at a time. When I did talk to her, she seemed like a completely different person. She was cold, distant, and whenever I asked her what was wrong, she'd just say she was fine and change the subject. About 3 months before I was supposed to come home, I started getting these weird messages from some of my army buddies who were on leave. They'd seen Lisa around town with some guy, but they weren't sure if I knew about it. At first, I defended her. I figured she was just making friends, and I was happy she wasn't sitting at home alone all the time. But then one of my closest friends, Mike, called me and told me he'd seen Lisa at a restaurant with a guy who looked exactly like me. He said they were holding hands and acting like a couple. When he described the guy, I realized he was describing Kevin. My stomach dropped, but I tried to convince myself there was some innocent explanation. I couldn't focus on anything after that. I kept thinking about all the times Lisa had mentioned spending time with my family, all the times she'd been unavailable when I called, all the ways she'd changed over the past few years. I started putting pieces together that I'd been too blind or too trusting to see before. When I finally got home, I decided not to tell anyone I was coming. I wanted to surprise Lisa, but I also wanted to see what was really going on. I took a taxi from the airport to our apartment, and when I got there, I could hear voices inside. I used my key to let myself in, and that's when I found them. They were in our bed, in the apartment that I'd been paying for while I was overseas, sleeping together like it was the most natural thing in the world. When they saw me, Lisa started crying and Kevin just sat there with this smug look on his face. He actually had the nerve to say that he was sorry I had to find out this way, but that they'd fallen in love and there was nothing anyone could do about it. I lost it. I started yelling and throwing things, and Kevin just kept sitting there acting like he was the victim. Lisa was begging me to calm down and listen to her explanation, but what explanation could there possibly be? She'd been cheating on me with my own brother while I was deployed, serving my country and sending most of my pay home to support her. But here's where it gets really messed up. Instead of my family being horrified by what Kevin had done, they all rallied around him and Lisa. When I went to my parents' house to tell them what had happened, they already knew. Apparently, Kevin and Lisa had been openly together for months, and my entire family had been covering for them. My dad's reaction was the worst. He looked me right in the eye and said that maybe if I'd been a better husband, Lisa wouldn't have needed to find comfort somewhere else. He said that I was never around, that I was selfish for choosing the military over my marriage, and that I should be grateful that at least she'd stayed in the family. My mom tried to play peacemaker, but even her attempts at being neutral were insulting. She kept saying that these things happen, that I was young and would find someone else, and that I should try to forgive them because family is forever. She actually suggested that I should consider letting them stay together because they seemed really happy. Amanda was even worse. She told me that I was being dramatic and that I should have seen this coming. She said that Lisa had been miserable with me for years and that Kevin had been there for her when I wasn't. She made it sound like I was the bad guy for being upset about my wife cheating on me with my brother. The final straw came when I found out that they'd all been planning to tell me together when I got back. They'd had family meetings about it. They'd discussed how to break the news to me, and they'd all agreed that the best approach was to present it as a done deal that I just needed to accept. Kevin had even moved into our apartment while I was gone. He'd been sleeping in my bed, wearing my clothes, and living the life that I'd been working overseas to provide. My own family had helped him move in and had been treating Lisa like she was his wife instead of mine. When I demanded that they choose between supporting me or supporting them, they didn't even hesitate. My dad said that Kevin and Lisa were building something real together and that I needed to stop being selfish and think about what was best for everyone. My mom said that she loved all her children equally, but that I was the one making this difficult by not accepting the situation. That's when I realized that I was completely alone. The family I'd been trying to please my entire life, the family I'd been sending money to while I was deployed, the family I'd been making sacrifices for, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. They'd chosen the son who'd stolen my wife over the son who'd been serving his country. So I made a decision that day. I cut them all off completely. I moved out of the apartment, filed for divorce, and stopped all contact with my family. I didn't go to any more family gatherings, I didn't return their calls, and I didn't send any more money home. I focused on my career, got promoted to Sergeant First Class, and started building a life that didn't include any of them. For 2 years, I didn't hear from any of them except through lawyers handling the divorce. I heard through mutual friends that Kevin and Lisa had gotten married and that my family had thrown them a big wedding that I obviously wasn't invited to. I heard that they'd moved into a bigger place and that Kevin had gotten a promotion at work. Apparently, everything was working out great for them. Then, about 6 months ago, everything changed. I got a call from my mom, which was surprising because I'd blocked all their numbers. She was calling from a different phone and she was crying. She said that my dad had been diagnosed with cancer and that the medical bills were overwhelming them. She said that Kevin had lost his job and couldn't help financially and that they were about to lose the house. At first, I felt bad for them. Despite everything they'd done to me, they were still my family and I didn't want to see them suffer. But then she started in on the guilt trip. She said that I was the only one who was doing well financially, that I had a responsibility to help them, and that this was my chance to prove that I was the bigger person. She told me that my dad was too proud to ask for help, but that he really needed me to step up and be a man. She said that Kevin and Lisa were struggling too because he'd been out of work for months and they had their own bills to pay. She made it sound like I was the only one who could save the family. The conversation that really got to me was when Amanda called a few days later. She was crying and telling me about how bad things had gotten. She said that my dad was getting sicker and that the treatments weren't working as well as they'd hoped. She said that my mom was having to work 2 jobs to try to make ends meet and that she was exhausted and depressed. But then she said something that made me realize nothing had really changed. She said that I needed to put aside my petty grudges and help my family in their time of need. She called my feelings about Kevin and Lisa a petty grudge. She said that I was being selfish and immature by holding on to anger about something that had happened years ago. That's when it clicked for me. Even now, when they needed my help, they still couldn't acknowledge what they'd done to me. They still couldn't admit that they'd been wrong. They still couldn't apologize or show any remorse for choosing my cheating wife and backstabbing brother over me, so I made another decision. I told Amanda that I'd consider helping, but that I needed to talk to everyone together first. I said I wanted to have a family meeting where we could all discuss the situation and figure out the best way forward. They agreed immediately, probably thinking that I was going to open my wallet and solve all their problems. We arranged to meet at my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. Everyone was there, my parents, Kevin, Lisa, Amanda, even my grandparents who'd also turned their backs on me years earlier. The meeting started with my mom giving me a detailed breakdown of their financial situation. The medical bills were substantial, around $80,000 and growing. They'd already mortgaged the house twice and maxed out their credit cards. My dad's contractor business had basically shut down because he couldn't work, and they were behind on almost every bill. Kevin jumped in to explain his situation. He'd been laid off from his finance job 8 months earlier and had been unable to find anything comparable. He and Lisa were living paycheck to paycheck on her income from a retail job, and they were barely making their rent. He said they'd already borrowed money from friends and had nothing left to give. Amanda talked about how she was fresh out of college with student loans of her own and an entry-level job that barely covered her expenses. She said she'd been trying to help with groceries and small bills, but that she couldn't take on anything major. Then they all looked at me expectantly. My mom started talking about how proud she was of my military career and how well I'd done for myself. My dad, who looked really sick but was still trying to maintain his authoritative presence, said that this was my chance to show what kind of man I really was. Kevin, with his usual arrogance, said that he knew we'd had our differences in the past, but that family was more important than old grudges. Lisa, who I hadn't spoken to since the day I caught them together, said that she hoped we could all move forward and support each other. I let them finish their presentations and then I stood up. I told them that I'd given their situation a lot of thought and that I'd come to a decision about how I wanted to help them. I said that I understood they were in a difficult position and that I had the financial means to help them. I told them that I'd been promoted again and was making good money, that I'd been saving aggressively for years, and that I could afford to help with their medical bills and other expenses. You could see the relief on their faces. My mom started crying and thanking me. My dad actually smiled for the first time since I'd gotten there. Kevin looked smug, like he'd known all along that I'd come through for them. Then I told them my conditions. I said that I'd be happy to help them, but that first I wanted to address some things that had been bothering me for a long time. I said that I'd never gotten a real apology from any of them for how they'd treated me during the situation with Lisa and Kevin. I told them that I wanted Kevin to admit that what he'd done was wrong, that sleeping with his brother's wife while that brother was deployed was inexcusable, and that he was sorry for the pain he'd caused me. I said that I wanted Lisa to acknowledge that she'd betrayed our marriage vows and that she'd hurt me deeply by choosing to have an affair instead of working on our problems or asking for a divorce. I said that I wanted my parents to admit that they'd been wrong to take Kevin and Lisa's side, that they'd failed me as parents when I needed their support the most, and that they were sorry for the way they'd treated me. I said that I wanted Amanda to apologize for dismissing my pain as a petty grudge and for making me feel like the bad guy for being hurt by my family's betrayal. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Then Kevin started getting defensive. He said that what happened between him and Lisa was complicated, that they hadn't meant for it to happen, and that I was being unreasonable by asking him to apologize for falling in love. Lisa started crying and saying that she'd been young and confused, that she'd made mistakes, but that she'd been happy with Kevin for years now, and that I was trying to ruin their marriage by bringing up the past. My dad, even though he was sick, started getting angry. He said that I was being manipulative and using their financial crisis to settle old scores. He said that what had happened between me and Lisa was between us, and that the rest of the family shouldn't have to apologize for staying neutral. My mom tried to play peacemaker again, saying that everyone had made mistakes and that we should focus on moving forward rather than dwelling on the past. Amanda said that she couldn't apologize for something she didn't think was wrong, that she'd been supporting Kevin and Lisa because she thought they were genuinely in love, and that I was being vindictive. That's when I realized that absolutely nothing had changed. Even when they desperately needed my help, even when I was the only one who could save them from financial ruin, they still couldn't admit that they'd been wrong. They still couldn't show me the basic respect of acknowledging the pain they'd caused me. So I told them that I understood their position and that I'd made my decision. I said that I wouldn't be providing any financial assistance to any of them, now or in the future. I told them that I'd tried to give them a chance to make things right, but that they'd chosen to stick with their original position. I explained that I'd built a good life for myself without them, that I had people in my life who actually cared about me and respected me, and that I didn't need their drama or their toxicity anymore. The reaction was immediate and intense. My dad started yelling at me, calling me selfish and heartless. My mom was crying and begging me to reconsider. Kevin was saying that I was punishing sick people because my feelings were hurt. Lisa was accusing me of being cruel and vindictive. Amanda was saying that I was destroying the family over my ego. But I'd made my decision, and I was at peace with it. I told them that they'd made their choice years ago when they decided that Kevin and Lisa's happiness was more important than my pain. I said that I was now making my choice to prioritize my own well-being over their financial crisis. I walked out of that house and I haven't spoken to any of them since. I heard through mutual friends that they've been struggling even more since then. My dad's condition has gotten worse and they've had to sell the house and move into a smaller apartment. Kevin finally found a job, but it pays much less than his previous position. They've had to declare bankruptcy and my dad's treatment options are limited because of their financial situation. Part of me feels guilty about it. I know that my dad is genuinely sick and that my mom is genuinely struggling. I know that Amanda is just trying to hold the family together and that she's stressed about everything that's happening. But the bigger part of me feels like I finally stood up for myself. For the first time in my life, I set boundaries with my family and stuck to them. I refused to let them use me and disrespect me just because they needed something from me. I've built a good life without them. I'm in a serious relationship with an amazing woman named Sarah who actually appreciates me and supports my career. I've got friends who have my back and colleagues who respect me. I'm financially stable and I'm finally happy. I don't know if what I did was right or wrong, but I know that it was necessary for me. I spent years trying to earn their love and respect, and I finally realized that some people will never give you what you deserve, no matter how much you sacrifice for them. So that's my story. I probably could have handled some things differently, but I'm not sorry for finally putting myself first. Sometimes you have to choose between being a good person and being a doormat, and I chose to stop being a doormat. Thanks for reading this far if you made it to the end. I just needed to get it all out there and maybe get some perspective from people who don't know everyone involved. I still don't know if I made the right choice, but I know it was the right choice for me.